Hello, I am Nicole Oman,
And I'm Ryan Oman.
and we are guided by the omens, and we are kind of trying out some fun new things. We're trying to figure out what kind of platforms we want to be on. So, guess what? Because of that, you get some free content. Haha, thank you. So, today is Monday, and
Moon Day.
yeah, so Ryan and I kind of worked on, actually, Ryan did it mostly, but he worked on figuring out what chakra related to what day. So he did a ton of research and he kind of looked up, well, you say.
Well, basically, there's 7 days of the week and there's 7 major chakras. So we thought, well, maybe they fit. And it turns out that they do really well, actually. And today being Monday or Moon Day is connected to the sacral chakra because the sacral chakra is connected to the moon and cycles and ebb and flow and high tide and low tide and kind of a feminine energy, a little bit more subconscious. The moon directly affects the tides of the ocean. It actually affects the earth as well, but it's a little more noticeable with the water. And the element of water is connected to the sacral chakra, therefore, Moon Day, Sacral Chakra Day.
So what I've been doing, yesterday I had Self-Love Sunday because it was connected to the solar plexus. But today, because it's connected to the sacral, the aspect of love that this one is actually connected to is called Eros. And Eros is romantic love. Oh. It's also connected to kind of that sexual and sensual love as well. Well, anytime I do content, I like to make it relevant to what's going on with me. I'm selfish. I don't know. But I want to make it relevant because I want to be connected to it as well. And I know that when I'm feeling something, that there's a good chance you might be feeling that, or you might understand it too. And so something that really came up for me today is I woke up with a sense of irritation. I was like really irritable.
It's probably my fault.
Probably. In some capacity, maybe. I don't know.
Sure. Subconsciously. I'm sure I cheated on her in a dream.
Why did you do that? Well, and I love that you bring up the subconscious, because the two chakras that are really connected to the subconscious is the sacral and the third eye. And I really do feel that bodily connection to our subconscious. We always have the saying that says, the body doesn't lie. And sometimes we can wake up with a sense of irritation and something happens and we can connect it to that. But a lot of times we might wake up with a sense of irritation and have no idea where it's coming from. And especially for women, not to say that men don't get this too, but we have a tendency to be a little more hormonal. We have more estrogen, whatnot. And so sometimes we have the bodily irritation, but really, if we didn't attach it to a thought, it's just the sensation. And so today, that's what I went into. And when I started to really feel into that, the word boundaries kept coming up. So I really wanted to talk about the word and the essence of having some boundaries. Because the sacral chakra does deal with emotions and water, it's very important to have boundaries, have a container for this water.
Yeah, having a container is a really good example of boundaries, because boundaries aren't all. I think a lot of times people think of boundaries as things to keep things out, but boundaries can also be things to keep things in. And a container holds water, it holds emotions, it holds that fluid that would just kind of spill out and get everywhere if you didn't have some of your own personal boundaries. So when we're talking about boundaries, don't necessarily just mean like, hey, stay away, this is my boundary. It's also like creating boundaries for yourself, going, okay, maybe I'm oversharing, or maybe I am expressing too much emotion. Our 4-year-old daughter is a perfect example of this. She's basically a barrel of emotions. She's either extremely happy or extremely sad. There's not a lot of in between, and she can oscillate from one extreme to the other fairly easily, in the same way that water can flow very easily from one area to the next. So having a nice solid container is going to help you to take all those emotions you may be feeling, whether it's sadness, anger, joy, disgust, fear, all the little colored guys from inside out. They have to have a container. And if they don't, then things can get awfully messy.
also what I kind of got this feeling too is if we're giving too much, right? So we might have to have boundaries for ourselves. Sometimes we get frustrated because people take advantage of us. But the truth be told, they only take advantage of us if they can.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're giving and offering and then we feel resentful, that means that something is off, and we need to take self-responsibility where we're coming from. We could be pissed off at everybody else for taking advantage of us or not appreciating all that we give. But to be honest with you, takers are going to take and givers are going to give. So we got to find that happy balance, that happy boundary for ourselves. And with this emotionally and maybe even sensually and sexually, we might have to look at maybe some leaky sensual energy, sexual energy that we might have. Maybe we're pulling on somebody, maybe we're getting pulled on.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to focus on this idea of, instead of just setting boundaries with other people, right? It's one thing, we could set that boundary with other people, like going to work and somebody's taking too much, and you can set that boundary. But if it's not within you, they're going to go right back to what they're doing. So what I wanted to offer today is maybe a little bit of guidance and a little bit of assistance on how to set that particular boundary.
And the word that keeps popping in my head, especially when Nikki brings up the idea of sexuality or sensuality, is the word consent. And consent is basically a boundary for sexuality. And you consent to have experiences with other human beings. You consent to have experiences with yourself. And that consent is something that you have to express in some way, shape, or form. And that doesn't necessarily have to be verbal. It can be a nonverbal consent. It can even be an energetic consent. You can set energetic boundaries. And Nikki and I do this all the time when we go to events or when we go to parties or when we go to meet with people. We're always trying to set an intention for that particular experience. And that intention in itself is a boundary. It sets an energetic consent. I'm okay to do this, but I don't really want to do this. I am looking for this type of an experience, not this kind of an experience. So being able to give yourself those internal boundaries is just as important as the external ones.
Actually, I think they're probably more important. It's like when you can create the container for yourself, you know what to say yes and no to, right? And I want to go back to this idea of like sensuality or even relationships. One of the things that I noticed many years ago, Ryan and I ended up breaking up before we got married. We were together for like 4 years or something, 3 or 4 years, and we ended up taking space for a while and then coming back together and taking space. And the last time we took space, it happened to be 3 months, and I went on some dates, and I was just super frustrated. And I ended up having this kind of temper tantrum to myself and a temper tantrum to my guides. I was all alone in my room, and I said, that's it. I've had enough. The only time I am going to date, or the only people I'm going to date, this man has to be doing their inner work, or at least willing. And they also have to have some sort of high connection to a higher power. I will not date anybody who is not doing inner work and not connected to God in whatever facet they want. I don't care if they're Buddhist, I don't care if they're Christian, I don't care, but they have to have a higher power. Well, funnily enough, I hadn't talked to him in 3 months, and in a week, he came back and he was saying exactly that. I want to start doing my inner work. And it wasn't until I laid that boundary for myself, I asked for what I wanted and needed, and I had so much emotion, right? So that irritation could come from you're at an enough is enough point. And you have to lay that container, lay that boundary down for yourself so that can enter into your life. And he got the universe mail and he entered, and he
I didn't consent to you saying that. So my side of that story is actually uniquely and interesting because while Nikki did some dating while we were broken up, I pretty much isolated myself from the world and threw a big old pity party for 3 months. So the interesting part of that was I threw up some big boundaries. Even if there were people out there who wanted to date me, I was having none of it. And even though I thought in my head I wanted to date people, in my heart I was just so introverted and so uninterested in putting myself out there that I did start to do some more of the internal work. And what was interesting was I was prepping myself to get back together at Nikki and didn't even realize I was doing it. Matter of fact, if I would have known, I probably would have stopped myself because I was so adamant about not getting back together.
I was
with Nikki at
adamant
the
to
time.
not get back together with you either. If I knew I was going to set that boundary and get you back, I'd be like, "Meh."
So the irony is, while Nikki opened herself up to other experiences, which ultimately closed her off and helped her create the boundaries that she was looking to create, I did the opposite. I closed myself off and ultimately needed to create a little bit less boundary or open a door so that I could love again, so that I could experience a relationship again. And one of the ways that happened for me, this very profound way for me, was that I had a vision board at the time. And I was so distraught and upset with the way my life was going and how things were playing out for me that I just needed to do something dramatic. So I literally took my vision board and I took it into the bathroom and I put it in the tub and I lit it on fire. And I was like, that's it. I'm done with this vision. I don't know what vision's coming, but it's not this one. And I think if you've ever done a vision board with the old school way, I'm sure people do it on Pinterest now or something, but back in the day, we used to take cutouts of magazine. Back in my day, we didn't have Pinterest. We only had interests, and they were all in this world. So we took all these magazine clippings, and we would cut them out and paste them to a big poster board and put it on the wall and be like, this is what I want to have. We all want to live in tree houses. And so when I burned that vision board, the thing that was left was just one little piece of paper. Now, the part that I had actually put on my vision board that you could see was flipped over. So it was actually what was on the back. It was what essentially I pasted to the board. And it literally said on that little piece of paper, ask me life's questions. And I was like, well, that's odd. It was the only piece of the board that didn't burn. It was just this little teeny tiny piece to ask me God's questions, or ask me life's questions. And so I basically was like, okay, what am I supposed to do? And they're like, well, come on, you big baby, go put yourself out there. And I was like, fine, I'm going to put myself out there. And like one of my buddies was like, hey, you want to go out? And I'm like, yeah, let's go out. And we went out, and we were living in Los Angeles at the time. We went to this bar, and I met some cute inebriated girl, and it was all green lights, and I thought this was going to be it. We were going to go home, and I was going to finally put myself out there. And it did not work out that way. Everything turned pretty gnarly by the end of the night, and we went our separate ways. And it was interesting because I had to come to this realization that I had opened myself up to an experience, but even with that opening up, I was still guided. Nikki and I were just starting to rekindle our relationship, and had something happened there, we probably would have stopped our relationship dead in its tracks there, and it could have been the end of it. We don't know. But the point being is that I opened myself up to an experience. I trusted my guides. I trusted God. I trusted myself. And ultimately, it ended up exactly the way it needed to be, and it helped me to let go of this idea.
The next day is the day we got back together.
Well, there you go. So boundaries are an interesting thing. So when we're talking about boundaries, it's like, it's easy to visualize this kind of fence that goes around, or a fortress or something like that. But every fortress has a door, right? There's always a door. So what does your door look like? As you're setting your boundaries, consider yourself, what do you want to come in? What are you allowing access in? Make a conscious effort to create a door.
And what are you keeping out? I think you brought in something very interesting and organic as we've been talking. I'm telling people to set some boundaries, and you're telling that they might have too many boundaries.
Right. It's about balance, because if you are a person who's naturally introverted or guarded, you are probably already pretty good on your boundaries. It's more about finding those access points where you're able to relate.
So I think tying it back in, because we're really going to relationship work, and this is something that we really
relate to it.
But this is something that's near and dear to our heart, because we have been studying relationship together for 18 years, married 12, and this is something we have dedicated our life to. And so within relationship, if you're looking for a relationship right now, I'd say this: notice what your boundaries are, see what you're keeping out. If you're completely guarded and shut down here, then you have to open up the gate. I love that you brought this in.
And if you're wide open and you're allowing just anyone to come in, of course you're going to be disappointed
and
because
you're
leaking
energy.
Yeah, you're
and
wasting
I've done that.
Yep.
I've leaked because I was looking for something so desperately to fill a void that I was bringing in things that did not align with what I really wanted.
And the truth is that we both chose different routes, right? We broke up with each other. She chose an extroverted route. I chose an introverted route. But neither one of those was correct and neither one was wrong. Basically, we're both imbalanced. We were seeking balance. She was seeking balance by going outside. I was seeking balance by going inside. And ultimately, when we finally achieved balance and came back together is when she learned how to close off a little bit and I learned how to open up a little bit, and that balance was restored. So if you're on either side of this coin, don't judge yourself. I've judged myself because I was like, oh man, I should have been out dating like Nikki. And then she's judged herself because she's like, I should have spent more time with learning to be myself. And the truth is, we both needed to do what we needed to do in the way we needed to do it. Otherwise, it would have happened in a different way. So accepting that that's all part of your process is the process.
But I will say, and this is kind of on my tangent, I have to say that because I dated other people, I realized how special we were and how special you were, and I needed I needed to do that because I needed to go, the grass is not greener, shit. It's not. So either here nor there, I hope that you can kind of look into yourself today. Look into your feelings. See if you're feeling irritated. Is there a boundary that needs to be closed? Are you leaving the back door open for the ex-boyfriend who is a jerk to keep coming in and needs to shut that door? Or have you gotten so brokenhearted in the past that you have like 18 guards outside of your gate and you're asking for a relationship and putting yourself out there, but every time somebody comes in, they get poked with a freaking spear? Like, you gotta see what you have around you. And the same thing if you're not looking for a relationship. It's the same thing with friendships. It's the same thing with jobs. It's the same thing with pretty much everything that we do. How we do one thing is how we do everything. So how available are we?
Like Lego Batman would say, I'm not into ships.
I don't get it.
Relationships?
I
have to see Lego Batman.
That was me.
The hazards of being a parent.
So I hope you can really feel into those boundaries today and be honest with yourself. What doors need to be shut? And what windows need to be open? Because if we're really looking for that balance, that harmony, and something is off, then it's an inside job. Do it here. Don't look for the guy on Tinder to do it for you. Do it here and see and notice that the people that you start swiping might come in differently.
It's time to swipe right on yourself.
Jesus. Okay, let's wrap it up.
That's also good advice in the dating world.
Okay.
I could do this all day, Nick. We better close this down because I'm only going to get worse.
Okay, everyone. So thank you for joining us. We're going to be doing these on different platforms right now. We're trying to figure out our platform. We're trying to figure out our strategy. Strategy? Yep.
I suggest we do it on platform 9 3/4.
Yes. Yay, we're really going nerdy here.
Mm-hmm.
So please join us. It's free content. Me and him are trying to work on our chemistry because we don't have any.
None.
And we're trying to figure out our new daily work. So give us feedback.
Yeah, tell us what you want us to talk about.
Yes. Give us content. Give us questions. Give us whatever you feel like you need. But we're really focusing on doing relationship work.
Ships.
We're into ships. We're also focusing on all the different aspects of love, which you're going to learn more and more about as we do these. And we are also really focused on serving. So whatever you need, let us know, comment, PM, DM, PM, whatever. What's the new thing?
DM and the PM and the AM, if you don't mind.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, so that is all she wrote for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope you enjoy our weird, witty banter, and we will see you soon. Thanks for joining.
We are guided by the omens. And so are you.
Namaste. I'm going to stay here.